on Opinion Court, we take a look, an incisive look at some of the key highlights of the manifestos of the two main political formations in the country, Jubilee and NASA. Talk to us. Text us on 22422 on Twitter using the hashtag Opinion Court. We talked to former Finance Minister and Kipipiri MP Amos Kimunya, who is also seeking to recapture that parliamentary seat on a Jubilee ticket, as well as Homa Bay Town MP Peter Kaluma and Edward Kisengani, resident analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for us tonight. And let us begin with the question of corruption. Yesterday we saw the Deputy President saying NASA is beholden to graft cartels that are funding the National Super Alliance campaigns. NASA has responded saying today, arrest whoever you want to arrest when it comes to corruption, and in fact that it's the Deputy President, that's what they're alleging, who cannot account for his wealth. We'll take a look at those sound bites now very quickly.
The NASA, or is it called whatever it is called, the NASA group, they have no moral authority to talk about corruption cartels, because their entire campaign, including the choppers they are using, is funded by corrupt cartels who siphon billions of money from Anglo leasing to every other scandal that took place in our country. We want to tell them the story they are telling us about corruption cartels, they can go and tell it to the birds.
Jana Ruto anasema ati NASA sisi tunapatiwa pesa na makatel, na waweka pale jina la Jimmy Wanjigi. Mwenye kupatia Ruto pesa zote ni Jimmy Wanjigi. Mahali walikosania, na muuliza Jimmy Wanjigi aambie Kenyans the truth about William Ruto.
To the Amos.
Yes. Well, the good thing is that at least the debate on corruption has been brought to the table by both sides. So that's good hope for Kenyans, that now, going forward, both parties, both sides are committed to addressing this issue. It's one of these things that refuses to die in Kenya. But the other good thing is that now
both sides are committed.
No, at least Jubilee is committed. The other side is not committed. We've seen the toned down version after the financials came on board. I believed the earlier versions for ODM were very strong on corruption. But after the financials came on board, it was toned down to, we will not do business with government, our people will declare wealth. That's already in the law. So what are you promising people to do when it's already in the law? But what Jubilee has done, it's been very clear in terms of what it's going to do, in terms of fighting corruption over the next 4 years.
Okay, very quickly. We'll look at what the manifesto says shortly, but very quickly.
Hussein, it is very unfortunate you require me to discuss the topic corruption in regard to Jubilee or William Ruto. I don't know whether I can beg I don't discuss that. Because Hussein, my position as a leader currently has been explicit throughout. If you remember, about 2 years ago, I threatened to bring an impeachment motion against William Ruto. And if you can play your clips, as I think you would find me saying, the other name for corruption in Kenya is William Ruto. So how do I sit here as a leader, knowing the cost of corruption in our country, to begin discussing what Ruto says? I beg we focus on what we need to deal around the fight. Really, it is annoying that we discuss Jubilee and Ruto over corruption. So it's like discussing synonyms. What you need to ask us is what should be done for us to fight corruption.
But there's a specific accusation.
Yes.
There's a specific accusation of NASA being funded by corrupt money and corrupt people. Let
me answer that.
Yeah,
the instruments for fighting corruption is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. It is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The judiciary comes at the tail end. Who is the national government? If we are benefiting from corrupt people, in which court are they charged? And why are they not being charged if Ruto knows so and is in charge of the government? Please, Hussein, let us focus the nation on things that matter, not discussing
but I
corruption.
think in fairness, we just saw the Vice President, or the former Vice President, admitting, saying that Jimmy gave money to Ruto, so it's no problem if he gives it to NASA, right? So it's like...
That's how you're interpreting it.
Exactly. That's basically what he's saying, that if he was... he also gave the money to Ruto, right? So he basically is saying, don't ask us what he's giving us, he also gave. And we've seen these things happening. Look, go back to the golden bank.
Are we debating Ruto with corruption?
No, we're looking at...
Let's make this point, Daniel.
I'm basically saying, go back to the times of the golden bags. You remember the old times of Kamlesh Patni giving, you know, the old man a few coins to fund the... And all of a sudden, the golden bag debate in Parliament died, yeah? By the then opposition. So, corruption money gets into the elections, warps up the whole thinking of the leaders, and I believe, like I said, it's very fortunate that this matter is on the cards right now. So as we go to rebuilding the Kenya, transforming Kenya into the future, we can now work on through the Jubilee agenda in terms of how do we transform Kenya from what it is into a Kenya where come next election it will not be full of corruption.
Okay, Prof, let's Prof respond now.
You know, this is very, very interesting. I think when you see what the Deputy President is saying and what the former Vice President says, I think it just confirms one thing, that both Jubilee and the CORD and the NASA are the same. There's totally no difference between these two political outfits, and like in the Shakespearean plot, fair, the witches say, fair is foul and the foul is fair. It depends on where you belong. When the witch moves from one camp to another, he becomes fair. When the same witch goes to another camp, he becomes foul. So they are now telling Kenyans how these corruption cartels work. And Hussein, to be fair, what these people, the two people are telling us is that Kenya is run by corruption. The engine that runs our country is corruption. And so now they are revealing what happens. Now you know who does what, who buys what. But in the essence, the lesson we learn from this is that Kenya has not reached a point where it has a leadership that can fight corruption. So what you are seeing, whichever team takes power in August, there will be no change on the issue of corruption.
Will this change anything? Because this is what they've promised. Both, I'll start with corruption here in terms of the manifestos. You have all been looking at the manifestos, both NASA's and Jubilee's.
Yes.
I'll start with Jubilee's. I believe that's what we have first here. The promise here, very briefly, because there's a lot, but first is to reduce the wastage of public resources, prosecute corruption cases in 6 months, protecting whistleblowers, also talks about jail term for economic crimes, and so on and so on. Review our taxation, duty and customs frameworks to ensure predictable, fair and transparent formula-based system. Issues about charter framework for the delivery of public services, and so on and so on. For NASA, they're saying there will be now no conflict of interest in the appointments or nominations, saying, I'll quote that, all NASA members appointed and elected shall sign a specific anti-corruption performance contract, which among others shall require they introduce and monitor standard anti-corruption initiatives in their sectors, shall not do business with government directly or indirectly, and so on and so forth. Zero tolerance on corruption, also introducing a national intelligence surveillance department to deal with corruption. Prof, I want you to answer this question. Which of these two manifestos do you think talks, because corruption is a big problem in this country.
Yes.
Which of the two manifestos do you think actually really talks about effectively dealing with corruption?
None.
Why?
There is none, because if you look at the measures they are putting in place, increasing the jail term, revising things about taxation, these things have been said several times. We even have a constitution. In fact, forget about it. Who among these people has referred, under corruption, has referred to Chapter 6 of the Constitution? Chapter 6 about integrity. That's the simple way to start fighting corruption. You make sure that the people who have integrity issues don't hold public office, they are not appointed in public office. But look at what has happened. Both parties were so defensive as we went into the nominations. People who should not hold public office or even vie for a position in public responsibility have been allowed to go through that. So really, both NASA and the Jubilee are paying lip service. So these are decorative. In fact, I tweeted, I think our viewers remember, I tweeted that this is showbiz. Jubilee is doing political showbiz. NASA is also doing political showbiz. None of these people. You know, just a moment ago, Hussein, you have seen the nominations they have made. Is there any political wing between the two, even as they do the nominations? Who is saying that Kenya can have a fresh start? They are recycling people who are even accused of participating in corruption, in election violence. People who have integrity issues, they are going to be nominated MPs and senators. There is no change. The change that Kenya is looking for doesn't lie with Jubilee.
What, for example, did you expect? Just one thing.
I expected a fundamental, the first thing both of them will say, we have a constitution, which is chapter 6, and which says that you cannot hold office when you have integrity issues. What they need
regardless.
to do, regardless. So what they are going to say is that we want to start implementing the constitution. But if anybody talked about the constitution, then I'll see they have realized that that part has not been implemented. Everything they do, they have suggested here, must be done in accordance with the constitution. Okay. But how many of them have talked about the constitution? I just want to complete this. I'm just completing this. The two Mheshimiwas. It's not just chapter 6. It's also Article 10 of the Constitution. National values, transparency, inclusiveness. These things are stated in the Constitution. But where is the loyalty of Jubilee leaders to these national values and chapter 6, which starts with Article 73? Where is that loyalty within what?
But I think selective reading of the Constitution does not do justice. The same Constitution, and one of the most outstanding facets of this Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And that Bill of Rights basically protects people from all manner of false accusations. Because we know in this country, if I don't want you to run, I'll just falsely accuse you. Then you are like, before now and then, you'll be branded as you know, the most corrupt and everything else. So we must protect people from all that. And that's why the protection within the Constitution becomes very clear, that there must be due process. And people who have been taken through that due process, then you have a legitimate right to say this one has been proved is not worth or fit to hold.
Which I agree with. It's making an important point. Yes. We are not saying that people must be be falsely accused. But if you look at Article 73 of the Constitution, it says that you hold public office in public trust. So if they said that Kisiangani, you have integrity issues, before I clear my name, I should voluntarily give way.
That is what you expected them to do.
Yes, I expect them to do.
What you're talking about is if you're taken through the due process and one is determined guilty, or
then they have no business being in public
which
office.
makes what Jubilee did to ministers wrong, to cabinet secretaries wrong.
Not quite wrong, because they voluntarily then stepped aside. Okay, and I think that's, I don't want to get into how that process.
Let me ask you.
But in terms of holding public office, in terms of elective offices, remember, it's the people making the final decision, right? If people decide to elect the village madman, it's the people who have made that choice because they believe that is the person who will best represent them in Parliament.
But there is this question.
So because the ultimate power is not even it's with the people. The Constitution says that the ultimate power of Kenyan people.
You have seen a clip. You have seen a clip here where the former vice president is saying that Jimmy Wanjiki gave money to the deputy president. But the deputy president, in another clip which we saw during the news, says that the former vice president has grabbed National Youth Service land. They have already given evidence against each other about what they did. Should the deputy president continue being the deputy president? Should even Kalonzo Musyoka continue being the running mate for Raila Odinga? These are issues. You have already been mentioned that.
But there has to be a process that now takes that information.
You take responsibility because you respect the
that information has to be processed and through the court process. So once the court then determines that who took land, who took the money, then we can now take it from there.
Corruption cannot be fought through this manifesto. These are funny things.
Okay, let's give Kaluma time to respond. But Kaluma, I mean, even for you, Kimoja, when people sit down to write a manifesto, we believe the best minds have gone into this.
Correct.
Corruption is a big problem. What you're talking about, taking a person through the whole system, so that we can be either proven guilty or not.
And most importantly, shortening that process. I think the Jubilee has undertaken that to shorten that period to 6 months so that people are not dragged in.
Right.
We're still listening to golden pack cases.
So we expected
you can shorten and clear criminals.
At the very
least,
gentlemen, at the very least,
let the court clear the person.
Okay, at the very least, what the point I'm making is, at the very least, we expected from both manifestos to come up with a concrete plan on how to handle that matter. Whether people should step aside immediately they are mentioned, or because there's also the problem of mudslinging, as he talked about it. And NASA has been accused. NASA has been accused of this because they've been very, very loud on corruption.
Have you read everything we've said around corruption? Let me start by saying this. You know, to say I'm very restrained today because I told you it is a waste of time debating the matter corruption with Jubilee. It is like squeezing blood from a rock. You hear Kimunya now telling you that there should be due process.
Yes.
When he started, he was telling you Jimmy Wanjigi is already corrupt.
I didn't say he's corrupt.
With anybody.
I didn't say he's corrupt.
You know what I mean? And this is why you see me smiling throughout. For you to deal with the matter corruption, and let me start by saying that before Kinisu left office, he confirmed a third of our national budget is lost to corruption under the Jubilee administration. You know, saying that is a huge amount of money. When you have a third of 2.6 trillion, you know what we are talking about. It's over 800 billion. And I remember we are losing that at the time we are saying we barely need between 60 and 70 billion to provide free secondary education.
But I believe you're just quoting some...
Now, what I'm saying, Kimunya, is that when you want to proffer a solution to a societal problem, you must know the problem. You need to diagnose the disease. And the question we should be asking before we go into the manifestos, is why do we have corruption in Kenya? So that you can look at the solutions being proffered to treat, the causal factors for corruption. And then let me tell you what they are.
Very briefly.
We've said in NASA that the biggest cause of corruption in the country is that individuals have captured the state and are doing business with the state. And you must, stop everybody at the top leadership of government, be it MPs going up to the president, from doing business with the state. I will tell you, Sen. When you do...
All that is already prohibited.
I'm telling you.
Exactly.
No, implement... Let me finish.
Let him finish.
Who is to follow the law? We are not the government now. I'm telling you...
But you join the government to break the law.
Let him finish. Just make your point.
Okay. Hussein, I don't know how much detailed you would want me to be. But for decency, I will not be. If you gave me time, Kimunya, to tell you how much trade with the state is being engaged in by Jubilee, the topmost leadership coming down, you will be sick. And this is why I'm telling you, Kisiangani, let me finish it. When you build a classroom through parents' contributions, you'll do it at 500,000. When you do it under government, it is 5 million. When you do a bridge called Sigiri, it is 1.2 billion. When you do it under CDF in Tarakanith, it is 25 billion.
Collapsed.
And I've told you, and it collapses before it is used. What I'm telling you is that we are in a state capture. And when NASA says, stop a situation where people who are governing the country trade with the state, it is a fundamental solution. Number two, look at those things critically. We are saying under Jubilee, the institutions that fight corruption, EACC, and you said you ought to have asked me how. EACC has been collapsed. BPP's office has been rendered subservient to the state. We are saying the Auditor General's office is struggling. We are saying do not just by legislation strengthen these institutions, but give them sufficient budget and involve them at all levels of government and in all government departments. What more do you need in that? But most importantly, while we are crashing in the fight against corruption, is lack of political goodwill. So when NASA tells you from the president coming down, we must show commitment. It is what we need.
And that commitment has been shown by receiving the finances from people who are believed to be tainted.
You know, those are propaganda.
But I'll ask you, like I asked him a question, I'll ask you one question, Honorable Kaluma. All these things you have said, yes, there could be and they are solutions to this. But the problem of corruption has been there. And people are prohibited from doing, there's conflict of interest. You cannot do business with government working in government. People still devise ways to do it. So it doesn't mean that because you're saying that people will not do that. It has happened and it's happened before. It doesn't mean that having these institutions strengthened or even given better budget, has it happened? It has happened, and we've had different people going to this
Let me answer you. Let me answer you. And I'm in Parliament. Kimunya, you're not there. When Jubilee come in, the first legislative amendments to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act they brought was to remove commissioners from the commission and leave the work of fighting corruption to the employees. So you have employees of the commissioners fighting corruption, yet the constitution tells you the commission are the members of the commission. What do you deal with? Return them there, fund them, and allow them to perpetrate corruption.
Some of your members in NASA voted for that amendment.
No, we didn't.
You voted. We can check.
Let me tell you.
But it was done in Parliament. It was done in Parliament.
By the way, Kimunya, this suggestion that we reduce even the period of trial for corruption cases, we had it in Parliament. I proposed 1 year or 1 month. Jubilee rejected it.
But now we are proposing 6 months.
No, but you rejected even 1 year.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Let's go to the past. We know the future is brighter. Okay.
Let's hope the future will be brighter. But as a Kenyan, you'll make your decision. Look at the manifesto. Another key thing in the manifesto is economy and infrastructure. Look at them very briefly, and we'll start with what we have now. Okay, we'll start with Jubilee. What they promise. Right, they promised 1.3 million jobs annually. This is up from 1 million jobs that was promised in 2013. Generate 1 trillion shillings in savings for 5 years, meaning 200 billion shillings will be saved every year.
Yes.
That is from wastage.
From wastage, yes.
200 billion.
Yes.
Okay. Less tax for low-income earners, reduce the cost of living, increase food availability. For NASA, what are they promising? Some of the issues, of course, are not being conclusive here. There's still a lot more.
That's a key.
But these are some of the issues. 10% GDP growth annually for NASA, single-digit inflation, prudent management of public debt, low interest rates, and improved tax collection. Very briefly, let's look at the infrastructure, because it goes hand in hand. For instance, when they say they're going to fund these infrastructure projects, both of them are talking about reducing taxes. And we've had a problem with collection of revenues. Yet we have a lot of debt.
But I can tell you one thing. You know, whatever...
Just a little bit that. Jubilee infrastructure, expand SGR to Malaba, expand the Nairobi-Mombasa highway to 6-lane, complete the LAPSET project, 57 large-scale dam construction, also electricity to everyone by 2020. For NASA, these are some of the things they are promising in infrastructure. Concentrate on county and rural roads, high-speed commuter rail within Nairobi, construct the Moyale, Mandera, Wajir, Garissa Road, construction of the Likoni Bridge, and so on. And
electrifying the SGR.
Right. So, fast. Jubilee is taking... Okay, we'll talk about all the issues of the economy, but 1.3 million jobs annually. Where are those jobs going to come from?
The jobs are going to be created by you see, the investment that is taking place within the infrastructure, the rectification and all that is going to open up, plus also the investments within the TVETs and the training is going to empower the youth, plus the funding that's going through the youth fund, through the weather funds and all that. You want to convert our youth from being employees to actually being employers, right? I think there's some fallacy in Kenya that people must seek employment. Now, every youth leaving the TVETs and all that, the technical training colleges, will be accorded the opportunity to practice their skills through an internship program, government funded, and after that, provided with the funding to actually become employers. And we've seen that happen in the rural areas. You rectify a place, and you're converting all those guys into entrepreneurs, and they go ahead. With what's happening with the IT trainings and all that, the Ajira program, all that is going to create these jobs, right? Plus, Kenya is opening up. We've seen about 200 companies coming on board, right? Because they believe Kenya is on the right track. All these are creating employment. Look at the money is going into the devolved, plus the infrastructure going there. There's lots of jobs being created around the devolved governments, right? So it's not a dream. We've seen the numbers come, and the numbers can only grow. But unless people aspire to become employers, to move away from looking for jobs in the civil service, but getting jobs and being empowered to actually create more jobs themselves, we will end up just with the dependency syndrome that's being created by our friends in the other side that will give people dole. You don't have to work. You don't have to work. Government will give you money. Where are you going to get this money from?
You know, Hussein, let us look at it critically. Jubilee is telling you that year by year, 750,000 job opportunities have been created in the last years. Kimunya, I want to tell you, that each year all our universities put together graduate barely 10,000 people. And they are all on the streets there. If you are creating over 750,000 job opportunities before, they would have been the first, employees across the country. So it is not as simple as that. I think it is taking Kenyans for fools to say that you are doing 750, you are going to 1.3 on things you cannot, rationalize. Let me tell you how
university.
Our nations,
jobs for the guy
our nations undertake those audits.
Yeah.
Nations like Germany, they create for you opportunity. If you are not in an employ, you have a situation where you are on a welfare state, you can be audited. What you need if you want to create jobs, and this is what we are proposing if you read our manifesto. Hussein, first you must have industries that can absorb people to work in them.
Which both of you are proposing, by the way.
Look at, yes, they are proposing, we are proposing. What you need to look at is commitment. And remember, you are talking of a party which has been in power for 4 years against a party which has never been in power.
So has no
look at the industries we have. Don't interrupt me, please. Look at the industries we needed to be reviving under Jubilee, from the sugar sector. You have the tea sector struggling, the bailout in coffee and everything. Are they being revived to enable us create those job opportunities? So what you need to do, once you have industries that can absorb people, and Jubilee has demonstrated they are not doing it, make not just registration of business easy, but make it easy for businesses to operate once they register here. Well, what you have in Kenya, Hussein, is that registration of businesses following our legislative interventions is very
That is not a problem.
But the cost of doing business is a problem. So the companies are running away.
You know the two Heshimiwas, with respect, you have lost it. And that's why both your blueprints on the economy is zero.
No, give us the solution.
The solution is this. None of you is talking about reforming this economy. And I expected both Jubilee and the NASA to say that our economy has a wrong philosophy. Our economy thrives on a poor productive sector because we don't produce enough to create jobs. Instead, we waste a lot of money on recurrent expenditure. You have the Minister for Finance. We pay a lot of money to people who get salaries, allowances, going to hotels. When you look at our budget today, 660 billion is going to infrastructure. But what is the recurrent expenditure? These are salaries and other things. It's about 1.2 billion. Before, in fact, a few months ago, the president promised that he will go to parliament and make sure that the salaries of people are regulated, especially public servants. Parliament has gone on recess without anything like that. So I expected them to say that.
Yeah.
So in terms of a philosophy, what we need is to expand the productive sector with a new philosophy for the economy and reduce the increasing funding of what? Recurrent expenditure. None of you talks about that. You are dismissed.
It's actually there. Enhanced investment.
How do you expand
development?
No, it's at a general level, at a general level. But we need to start with a philosophy that, that from now going forward, our national budget will go to the productive sector with these percentages. So I expected them to say that the recurrent expenditure is no longer going to take over 50% of our national budget. We are now going to say 30%.
You have to be realistic.
Yes.
There are some
that has not been done.
You have to be realistic.
I'm now convinced.
These are the manifestos.
Let me help Prof here. I mean, we must look at Kenya from where we are.
Yes.
You cannot just think of infrastructural growth and leave behind the social growth.
Yes.
The social protection.
Yes.
You have to you have to invest in health, you have to invest in education, you have to uplift the lowest of the lowest, so that at least they can participate in the economic development. Now, what you're advocating is put all the money in infrastructure development,
not all,
or the bulk of it, but you must still take care of the child going to school, which is what Jubilee is saying.
Yes.
We take the kids to school, we help the mothers, we invest in health, and we also invest in technical training. Now, when you get people coming out of the technical training institutions and you're also doing the industries, then you have a match between the industries and the labor force.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
You know, can I agree with Prof?
Very brief, very brief. Yeah.
Yeah, Prof, you are right when you say we should be spending more on development than
to create
recurrent.
jobs. Yes.
Let me tell you. Huh?
Yes.
But you get it wrong when you say we should not have recurrent.
No, I've not said
Where
that.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Is if you were to say that we need to, you know, reduce the wage gap.
Yes.
Between the highest paid
and the lowest
paid. And I saw the salary increment for civil servants the other day. You know, the higher you earn in Kenya under Jubilee, it appears the more you should get. The lower you earn, look at the salary of police officers. Look at the salary of nurses, 16,000. Police officers, 16,000. And then you are talking of, if you are Kaloma or a CS, it needs to be doubled. This lower one is left low. We need to reduce the gap, bring up the lower one, but we will continue to employ still. Remember, SRC only advises. It does not impose.
But it's a constitutional body, one of these bodies that we brought in.
No, SRC is it does unconstitutional things.
It has been taken over.
All right, gentlemen. Sadly, I mean, we have a lot to cover still, but we can't cover everything. This is the problem with
but let me say something. I want to say on the infrastructure.
Yes.
When I was looking through the NASA, the whole write-up on infrastructure, it is just a copy straight from Vision 2030, completely the colors, right? No thinking. It just comes straight from Vision 2030.
Okay, that's good.
So nothing new. Let us
nothing new.
Yeah, nothing new from.
All right. So finally, I mean, I wanted to look at food security. I wanted to look at devolution, but I'll look at devolution very briefly. And devolution here because of what NASA has promised, and it's really interesting. Okay, we can look at food security as we go on as well. The Jubilee promises lower fertilizer costs, I think 1,500, that's what you're proposing. Expand irrigation now to, I don't know, 1.2, 1.3 million acres. Enhance strategic food results. Although you had promised 1 million acres that you didn't achieve. That is at Galana Kulalu.
Yes, because it's still at piloting.
Food security for NASA. Construct county food storage silos across the counties, Promote maize and cash crops, avail seeds, fertilizers and, to farmers as well as farm inputs. Devolution, I think we handled issues of food last week, on Tuesday on the big question. But we'll also be talking about these things. The manifesto is still there and we can talk about it. Very briefly now as we wind up. Devolution, this is, I think there's a mix-up that is supposed to be housing 500,000 affordable homes annually. That is for both Jubilee and NASA. They both promised that. Devolution, Jubilee says enhance service delivery with counties, structured conditional grants, enhance county revenue generation, county allocation ready at 34%. NASA says raise county allocation to 45%, review devolution transition process, and restructure national treasury. But this is the most interesting one. Move to a hybrid constitutional amendment to have a hybrid executive system. I want you to comment on that.
Okay. You have to understand. I'll go for the issue on the hybrid.
Yes.
I was shocked
based on the draft Bomas.
Yes, I was shocked by this provision. The reason why I was shocked is this. The reason we went to Bomas and ended up with this constitutional dispensation is people were tired of a hybrid system, executive system. The hybrid system is where partly there is an executive operating in parliament and partly it is out of parliament. And it is working together. So therefore, you have ministers. When they appear in parliament as ministers, they are executive. But when they appear as MPs, they are actually the legislature. Taking the legislature and the executive back to the same bedroom and the same bed is an abuse of what Kenya is intended to do. So really, for me, to do that, we shall need a referendum. And we need to do a referendum and say, we are going back. You know, what NASA has done, it is running short of telling you that we want to go back to a parliamentary system. Now, this parliamentary system, or a pseudo-parliamentary system, where the executive is policing what the legislature is doing inside the House. So, what this one is supposed to achieve, I don't know. In one of the forums that some of the Jubilee officials talked, NASA officials talked about, referred to this matter, they said that, you know, it is good for party leaders to end up in what? In parliament, and then it's good for ministers also to be in parliament to answer what? To answer questions. This is what shocked me, because now, that provision, if it's implemented within the shortest time possible, if NASA takes power, it takes us back to the same problems we had under Moi and Jomo Kenyatta.
I think it's a very different thing. What the Bomas proposition was about, and I believe that's what's being proposed now, is to have a ceremonial president. who is as head of state.
So you go to
and then
parliamentary
an executive prime minister,
yes,
who is produced by the party with the majority. And the biggest problem we had with us in Bomas was the creation of the two centers of power.
Yes.
And people say this cannot work because you envisage a situation where the one is popularly elected by the people, then muted to become a ceremonial, then
Parliament.
100 MPs elect a prime minister who then takes on the power.
It's a parliamentary system.
That's a parliamentary system,
yes,
but with a head of state popularly elected, but who is ceremonial.
Yeah.
And Kenyans said they don't want to elect a ceremonial president. They want a president who takes charge. And then within the whole rigmarole working out, some powers of the president were taken and given to parliament. The balancing act that took place between 2005 and 2010 to come with a constitution that is now took care of the misuse of power by the president and giving people the assurance.
Kaluma is shocked.
Yes.
In fact, Kaluma is shocked.
Can I tell?
No, Kaluma is also shocked because he doesn't believe in that.
But Uzen, you see me laughing. In fact, I'm not surprised. Kisiangani and Kimunya are very happy. Debating on one side.
No. That's not the point.
I have had the benefit of experiencing a presidential system in Parliament, Kimunya.
Yes.
You remember when there were issues around your ministry the other time, Aluale had you there to deal with it.
That was not a presidential system.
You are a parliamentary. You are not listening.
Yes, that was not a presidential system.
And I'm listening also, Prof.
Okay.
It's part of debate.
All right.
I'm telling you, what happened between you and Aluale in terms of accountability at that time is the beauty of parliamentary system. We have a situation under presidential system today, where you raise an issue in representing the people, the concern of your people, and a fellow MP is answering you. And when you push very hard, by then you are told the minister is not coming, he's meeting the president. So I want to tell you, out of my experiences, a parliamentary system, if you want a more accountable and transparent government, it is in parliament. And we are not saying that you will have the president sitting in parliament, but you'll have somebody and the people running the government answering to the representatives of the people there. Let me shock you.
But it's being put in the wrong way because
let me tell you,
to ensure that the position that will be are brought to the constitution.
By the way, we have a prime minister already. Don't worry. And it is not for you to discuss how we are going to structure our government. I saw during the campaign in Kisii, we directed Hussein, can I have
very briefly, okay, let him finish his work, very briefly. Okay.
When you have ministers outside, away from the representatives of the people, you can't have questions dealt with. We just had an issue of, CDF money being routed through Ministry of Education. And you got Matiang'i telling you we have given for schools construction, and it is CDF. And you call Matiang'i, you can't get him. If you are an MP, I am with you there daily, and I deal with you on matters of accountability in the manner I was telling you.
We have to leave it there, sadly. Thank you so much for making time for us. Amos Kimunya, Peter Kaluma, and Edward Kisiangani is a resident analyst. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is Opinion Court on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We're back after this.